Old adventure games of any kind can be extremely difficult to go back to, with their arcane puzzles and extremely dated visuals. But perhaps the worst of the lot are from the era of the full-motion video adventure game. That dark time in the history of video game development when everyone felt the need to include real-life actors in their games and throw them in some pre-rendered environments that look awful by today's standards. But at the time, everybody was going on and on about how real it looked, truly. This was the future of video games. That's not to say there isn't a modern appeal, though a lot of it comes from the campy acting and awful stories. But very few of these games have managed to hold up in an actual gameplay sense. Adventure games already have a tendency to age poorly, but the inherent blurriness of pre-rendered scenes often made these games even worse. A few later entries in the genre, however, saw the inherent weaknesses and made an effort to work around them. Games like the one I'm looking at this week, the Journeyman project, Pegasus Prime. To be fair to those other FMV games, Pegasus Prime is a remake, a chance to right the design wrongs and technical shortcomings of its predecessor, the original Journeyman project game released in 1994. Pegasus Prime was originally released 3 years later in 1997, though it was only released on the Mac, and the version I'm reviewing today, released on GOG in 2014, has even more tweaks and changes that recognize the modern-day realities of playing one of these rather arcane old adventure games, while also adding relatively substantial new features like the ability to control certain sections which were previously just auto-playing cutscenes. But perhaps the most important addition as far as playing this game in a modern sense is the ability to auto-solve some of the game's more tedious puzzles. There are a few particularly egregious examples where you need to disarm bombs that are just not fun to play. If you love them, great, you can still play them, but if at any time a puzzle frustrates the hell out of you and you're playing on the lowest difficulty level, you can just skip them. Same with the new vehicle sequences. If you don't really want to do it, just toggle the difficulty and you don't have to. It'll play a cutscene like it used to. That ability to choose what you actually want to do to fine-tune your experience is something that is sorely missing from the few modern examples of the genre, much less re-releases of old games. And Pegasus Prime benefits greatly, because without the frustration of the more contained puzzles that take place on a screen, you can focus on the far more interesting puzzles the game has to offer, which are sort of the traditional type of adventure game puzzle, requiring you to explore everything you can, picking up items, and finding places to use them. But what makes that unique and interesting in Pegasus Prime is the addition of time travel, which is an integral part of the plot. You're a government agent who are sent back in time to fix events that have been tampered with in the past. But it also makes for some really cool puzzle-solving mechanics, taking items from one point in time and then using them to solve a problem that you stumble across in another, making the repetitive backtracking a bit more mechanically interesting. Still, like all adventure games, the quality of this game comes down to environment, plot, and characters. And while Pegasus Prime is lacking in characters, even introducing a time travel-related plot conceit that you can't have direct contact with anyone in the past, it makes up for it with its decidedly B-movie-esque plot and environments. It has this really fun, campy science fiction vibe that goes really well with the graphical style and limited, but very cheesy acting. Between its atmosphere and the concessions that it has made in the puzzle department, Pegasus Prime has managed to carefully mold an arcane FMV adventure game into something playable in a modern sense. It still has a ton of age-related rough edges, but it manages to shine through that layer of dust with no real issues. Every Monday, I look at a game that's at least 10 years old, what I would consider to be retro, and I see if it's held up today, if it's still worth playing now. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe so you can see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and thanks for watching.